We're sitting in a local cafe in Addis Ababa after traveling a week up country in the Sidama and Yirgacheffe regions. And we're still here with Kirubel from our sourcing partner Sukafina in Ethiopia. And after traveling the country for a week, we have a lot of reflections that we wanted to discuss with you. And one thing I think that really struck us is that just like in countries like Kenya and other East African countries, you see that there's infrastructure-wise definitely challenges, that there's at the farms a limited amount of tools readily available, and maybe most importantly that farmers are quite far removed from how we assess quality in coffee, from cupping, from how we roast coffee. They mostly make coffee in the traditional Ethiopian ways, which is very different from how we drink it in the West. So given this whole context, how does Ethiopia manages to produce year after year some of the best coffees in the world?
From the beginning, Ethiopia is lucky to have one of the best landscapes available. This is due to our long stretch of mountains that formed over time. These mountainous areas, I would say you'd have altitudes ranging between 1800 to all the way to 2400 meters above sea level. And this is not like a few short amount of areas, it's like a huge wide stretch part of land. And these lands is where Ethiopians try to grow as much specialty coffee as possible.
How do these highlands help the coffee flavor?
So the higher the altitude, you'd find most of the time cherry development is very slow and longer. This really helps with the complexity and the flavor profile of the coffee.
And does the soil have anything to do with this as well?
Ethiopia has one of the most fertile soils available. We have a lot of volcanic soil, which really has a lot of nutrients. In addition to that, there's a lot of clay in between the soil, which really helps with moisture retention. So coffee trees are very sensitive trees. They like good amount of moisture, not too much. They like good amount of sun, not too much. It's finding the right balance, which is important. In terms of farm management, most Ethiopian farms, you'd see there's a lot of shade trees. This has been the traditional way of doing things and has really benefited the quality of coffee in Ethiopia. So the fact that there's a lot of shade protects the coffee trees from the sun, which could be really intense in high altitude areas. And also in terms of cherry maturation as well, when the cherries ripen, if there's enough sunlight, the cherries would ripen really fast. Could be good in some cases, but in most cases it would always be better if the cherries ripen on the trees slowly with some shade. So this also plays a huge part in terms of the complexity of the cherries.
I think one thing that we noticed this week is how much effort is placed. I think every farmer we visited was very proud to show the evenness of the ripeness of the cherries that were selected. So how important is this, and how are farmers trying to manage that during picking and in post-harvesting?
Picking is almost 100% done by manual labor. So it's a seasonal work. There's in one season, most of the people that go in, the farmers themselves either try to train as much as they can so that whenever there's picking, they pick only the red cherries as much as possible. Might not be always the case. Some things always pass by. That's where the post-harvest practices really are important in terms of producing good lots of coffee. So for the post-harvest, again, it's super labor intensive. Farmers really rely a lot on large number of, as you already saw on the farms, pickers going into each lot on raised beds, picking out as much unripe, ripe, defective cherries as they can. This picked cherry is not, of course, discarded. It's also part of the cycle. Ethiopia is a huge coffee consuming country, so everything that's not ready to be exported is easily consumed locally.
Yeah. And this selective picking, it happens throughout the whole process. It happens when they're picking at the farms, it happens when the cherry arrives, it happens when it's drying on the tables, it happens in washing, so it's a constant process.
Yes, it's never ending until the coffee or the cherry turns into pods, they dried, and everything is picked and done. Once they go into the warehouse, that's where at least most of the manual labor intensive things are over. Same for washed.
We were always buying sort of a regional blend because a washing station would typically be supplied by hundreds or thousands of farmers that live around the washing station. And generally with Wide Awake, what we do in terms of sourcing is we try to set up more direct long-term relations with individual farmers that we can work with year after year, that we can support year after year, that we can have their great coffees on our lines year after year. And so this was a good moment to come to Ethiopia, I think, because Sukafina has been developing for a few years now the La Lisa program. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about that?
The La Lisa program basically was established, I think, around 5 years ago. The idea was to create a direct supply chain between the farmers and the end client as much as possible. This was finally possible thanks to change in government regulations, which allowed farmers that have a plot of 2 hectares or more to become not just producers, but producer exporters.
Yeah, and this wasn't possible before. It wasn't possible for a single producer to immediately sell their coffee or immediately export their coffee.
You'd have to be like a commercial farmer who has like large farms to do that. But now, small-scale farmers, if they can find the market for it and if they can produce coffee that they can find the market for, can export. This is part of the government's initiative to actually motivate these small-scale farmers, but most of them, even though it's possible to do it, they don't know how to do it. They don't know who the client is. They can't really like bridge the gap. That's where Sukafina at least helps them find the market. We don't just give or help them find the market. We are really hands-on. We have a team of agronomists upcountry in both Sidama and Yirgacheffe area who are giving farmers post-harvest, pre-harvest training, and also farm management training so that they can improve the quality of their coffee and they can do more specialty coffee instead of just selling whatever they produce to the local market.
And I think we've seen this at a couple of different farms in practice where they are either, for example, changing older trees to newer trees or implementing better practices in post-harvest. One thing we've also seen is that for now, in reality, it's mostly happening with natural coffees, right? Washed coffees is a bit trickier for those individual farmers because it requires more infrastructure.
Even right now, farmers are attempting a little bit to do a little bit more of experimentals within their own scale. They've started to do anaerobics. They've started to do a little bit of honey as well, which is at least easier for them to implement. One of the good parts about this is all of these anaerobics and honeys were based on farmers directly talking to roasters, where roasters requested for specific types of coffee and the farmers are attempting to do it. So down the supply chain, if more washed coffee demand from farmers directly is needed, I think they would try to find a way to accommodate.
There's clearly a benefit for, I would say, roasters, for an exporter like Sukafina, but also for the farmers themselves.
The more involved the farmers are in the value chain, the higher yields they gain in terms of financial compensation. This, in a way, does also motivate the farmers to do a bit more. They've improved in their farm management at least. We've seen a lot of them implementing more fruiting, stomping, which is something Ethiopian farmers do not want to do. It's something that really goes against what they believe, because they always believe the older the tree, if it gives, then it will give again. We had a story with an 88-year-old farmer who actually sold his first couple of bags to Sukafina. He's getting ready to uproot around 1,000 trees, or he's going to try to uproot around 1,000 old trees of his farm and replant new select varietals. This is an example of how the project does impact the farmers. So farmers know in a way that if they do a lot more on their farms, they can somehow get rewarded more when they actually find the market.
Driving around Yirgacheffe and Sidama, meeting all these farmers, hearing their stories, I also realized a lot of them are true entrepreneurs, and they are looking to further increase the value that they get out of their production. And I think maybe in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, traditional producers in Ethiopia were maybe more focused just on picking the cherry and immediately selling that cherry to a middleman. But then they were only paid for the cherry. And at least some of the farmers that we've met, they go way further than that.
Farmers in Ethiopia are trying to take as much part of the value chain as possible. So for Ethiopia, where we're a majority producers of natural coffee, it makes sense if the farmers just sell the coffee as cherry, then that's where their margin ends, that's their value chain, it's over. If the farmers go one step higher and they dry it into pods, they grab an additional section of the value chain. If the farmers are able to export it, then for the most part they get the maximum value that they can get for their coffee. As you mentioned, they're becoming really good serial entrepreneurs. They're finding ways to improve the quality of their coffee. They're finding ways to find the market. So it's a good start.
And I think for us as a roaster, it then also becomes interesting to find these people, to support them on the long term, because maybe right now they have a little drying facility, but maybe if they find good export opportunities that are long term, that are year after year, maybe at some point it allows them to build a washing station or to buy a washing station and to start washing their coffees and again increase their value in this market share basically.
Farmers are the backbone of the entire coffee sector, so the happier they are, the better coffee that we get. So hopefully we can build sustainable relationships that will benefit both the roaster and the farmers.
Well, I want to thank you for your time, Kirubel. You were on the road with us for a full week. We're very excited to see this more traceable future in Ethiopia, more direct partnerships with farmers here that we've met. We're very eager to couple the coffees and start planning our purchasing for next year. Just thank you for being with us the whole time and for the amazing hospitality and showing us around in Ethiopia.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming to Ethiopia and visiting us.